O'clock. Been talking about trains this morning, and let's turn our attention to South West trains. Why? Well, we've got sort of difficulties this morning to actually update you with. Train travellers have been left high and dry by frequent cancellations, disruption and a constant chopping and changing of services and routes. That's a complaint from 58 councillors across East Surrey and South Croydon. They've asked Thameslink and Southern bosses to think more about the impact on families. Mario Creatura is a Conservative councillor for Coulsdon Town. Morning to you.
Morning.
The company recently said it was running fewer services due to COVID, so some passengers might need to change trains, but your letter mentions people having to actually run at East Croydon. Can you explain how bad things are?
Yeah, exactly. Things are pretty bad, and they have been for a while. I mean, there's a lot of sympathy because of the lack of drivers, people being off sick because of having COVID. But to be perfectly honest, we are seeing now that as life is getting back to normal, the train service just isn't keeping pace with the needs and the demands of local people. And that's the reason why we wrote to the chief exec. It's really... Sorry.
Some people would say that it was always awful, so inarguably it is got just back to normal.
Well, I've heard from one resident who was saying that, the trains are starting to get back to normal, but it's just under 2 weeks until resumption of the normally poor service rather than the currently exceptionally poor service. So I think there really is a major effort that needs to come from the rail companies to really try and think about putting customers first, because at the moment that doesn't seem to be happening.
Now, the thing is, you're not a lone voice. 58 people, 58 councillors represents a huge amount of people. Have you heard back from Thameslink and Southern?
We've had a holding message at the minute saying that it's been passed on to the Chief Executive's office, but we're hoping that because it's got every councillor in Reigate, a good chunk in Croydon and Tandridge, and we know that the great local MPs, Crispin Blunt and Chris Philp and Claire Coutinho have been pushing for it as well, that hopefully we'll be able to get a reply in the very near future.
Right, and last month, Angie Dole from GTL said that they were focused on running a reliable service, not lots of last-minute cancellations or big gaps between trains. Do you accept there's a bit of a trade-off?
I do. I think our passengers and our residents are very reasonable people. But the issue is not just about trying to compensate for the pandemic. Just to take a recent example, there were Christmas engineering works that went through to early January. That cancelled most Victoria trains. Then in early January, when it was meant to resume, we were told that they would continue until further notice. So how are you expected to plan your life around that? Local people have got lives to lead, childcare to sort out and jobs to get to. Turning up for a regular train, crossing your fingers and hoping for the best each morning really just isn't good enough. So we need to do better.
One of the things that I know when I was commuting into London that I used all the time was the app where you actually look at, what the train is actually doing. Is that reliable?
It is reliable as far as I know, but the problem that you have is when you see cancellations after cancellations, so that regular commuters who try to get into London, their welfare is getting seriously impacted by this. If you can't plan how to get to work or not, it makes life very difficult. An example that was recently shared with me, that if you're trying to get home from London to Reigate after a long day at work, some of the London Bridge Thameslink trains arrive into Redhill 45 minutes before the next Redhill to Reigate service. So you've either got to fork out about £8 for a taxi to Reigate or wait 45 minutes after a long day at work just so you can get home. And that's not reasonable to expect people to adapt their lives in that kind of disruptive way.
Sometimes you just wish that the people who are running these train services actually had to do that commute.
I completely agree. I mean, so many of us in Surrey are rail commuters. We can't go to a different company if we get a poor service. The train that's on the track is the one that we have to get. So we're kind of at the mercy of the companies who are currently not delivering the quality of service expected by our residents. And I think what we're really pushing for, and the reason why so many of us have written this letter and signed this letter, is to get this mind shift change happening in the train companies. That it's not just about get the engineering work done as fast as possible, but think about the long-term impact on the welfare of passengers, putting passengers front of centre of their minds when they're coming up with these strategies, so that we actually deliver a service that matters to local people and that really has a big impact on their lives.
Mario, good talking to you. Whilst you're here, judging where you are in Coulsdon Town is where you're councillor for. We've been talking about this whole thing with Surrey County Council and other local councils not actually matching up with the half term. Is that something you've heard?
So I've heard about it. I've read about it on the news. My wife is an SEN teacher, like your previous caller. She's impacted by this. So we're constantly trying to juggle around school holiday time. So I have a lot of sympathy with parents affected. But Surrey Council have got a massive job. I think you just said they've got 14 neighbouring local authorities to make this balance out with. So I'm sure they're doing the best possible job they can. And I'm sure that they've heard everything that you've been saying this morning. Let's
hope so. Mario Creatura, thank you. Conservative councillor for Coulsdon Town. Want to chip your tuppence in? Well, you know where we are. You can pick up the phone for free. 0800 587 1046, our number. Keep you up to